You are now listening to Out of the Blank.
Welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. I'm here with Jamie. Now, is it Steen?
Yeah, it's Steen.
So I had your sister on the podcast, and you're part of the the true, what is it? It's Cults and Crime podcast.
Yep. We cover cults, crime, and everything in between.
So tell me a little bit about yourself, and then also what do you do professionally?
So I'm actually a full-time student right now. I lived overseas for 3 years with my husband. He's in the military. So while I was over there, I really tried to get back into my education, but it was hopelessly impossible. I don't know if you've tried online schooling, but it is not for me.
I got my associate's degree in like a matter of like a year and a half because I was taking a workload of like 6 classes, and they're like,
Oh, yeah.
you're not going to have any free time. I was like, let's just get it out of the way.
Mm-hmm. Well, you have to. Even if you only take 4 classes at a time, you still wouldn't graduate for like 5 or 6 years with for a bachelor's. It's nuts.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, like for me, school was never my forte, but I found that I learned a lot more in college than I did in the regular education, just because it gave me more of options to learn, and it felt completely different than when I was in high school.
Yeah, you have a lot more freedom to do your own thing. Like, it's on you to make sure everything that you get is put in on time and your work is good. Your teachers aren't going to baby you anymore like they did in high school, which is good and bad. 'Cause I feel like a lot of teachers will still think of their students as children, even though these people are, 18, 19. I'm 25. So I've had some teachers that just would treat me like a child, and I am so annoyed by that.
Now, do you question like kind of the education system a little bit? Because for me, I felt like I never got a good roll of the dice when it came to the education system. I have a bad ADHD, so back then they didn't know too much about it. So it was like shove him in a room or send him out,
Oh,
isolate
yeah.
him. So immediately I was like, school's just a joke. It's all bullshit. Nah, it's not real. Everything's fake. And then eventually, like, I look back, like my little cousin who's in school, and talking to my teacher I podcast with, like she's like, "Oh, it's changed everything. They're way aware of mental health, bullying, all these types of things." I was like, I remember when we tried to ban the R word in 8th grade, and I swear everyone just increased the amount of times they said retarded in a day after that. Like it was trying to get people to stop, and people just weren't listening.
It's completely different. When I started going to college, I was 18, 19, and it was very much, the traditional, what I think of as traditional schooling. But now it's completely different. And I started going to school in California, and now I'm going to school in, deep south. So that might be why it's different. But teachers have a lot more freedom to what they're allowed to talk about, which can be a good thing or a bad thing because they're talking to impressionable young youth. But sometimes they talk about things that I don't personally agree with. And as a student, you have to like shut it.
Yeah, you have to
And
kind of.
some,
Well, it's funny because like when you get to college, the teacher just like, I want to teach you like, another adult, like you're not a kid anymore. I think we all saw the what Bill Nye does now on Netflix with his show. And
yeah,
like the intro to it, he was like, he just lit the globe on fire. He's like, the planet's burning. He's like, wake the fuck up. He's like, I taught you when you were kids. Now you're adults. I'm like, that's all we needed. We're still
mhm.
being babied, like we're being talked to like we're a dog or like a small child. I'm like, just talk to me like I'm a human being. Like I can comprehend basic functions.
Yeah, basic ideas. Yeah, because the kids that are going into college now, they have access to so much information. Not just libraries, traditional, but they have the internet. And the internet was used back when I was in school. Obviously, I'm not that old, but
I
not
still
to
had a
the
textbook. I still had a
yeah.
textbook.
I had a textbook, and we had like when we had sources for a paper, they had to be like word, paper, ink, book sources. And now everything's done online, and all the teachers rely on online. Like I've had teachers that didn't teach a single thing because the homework was online, the book was online, their slides they bought it through the system they bought their homework through. So they would just read the slides in class, and then you go and you learn online.
It's funny because like they stopped teaching cursive like as I was learning it, like about to finish, like they stopped on the Z. So like I was like, well then how do I do the Z? And now when I write my checks, I just do it in print. Like I try my best to do a signature. I barely know cursive. I can't even really read it. I was like, why did they just decide to take this out? They're like, you're not going to need it anymore. I'm like, "Well, when did this change? This was such a thing we had to learn, and now it's not even mandatory."
Yeah. And I kind of agree with that because the education landscape has changed. The things you need to know about have changed. And that's really hard for someone who started, back in the day learning, because your education foundation is different than someone who started that education at a lower point than you, time wise. But I don't mind it because I've never used, like, I wouldn't say never, but I don't use cursive day to day. So I understand why they're like, we should be teaching kids how to code, not teaching kids how to sign their name in cursive.
Yeah, I mean, that boggles my mind because I actually read a book on coding for computers and the way they do it, like zeros and ones and all these types of stuff. Like I've podcasts with people that talk about like being able to cipher out the message that's in between, private information and stuff. And then I read a book on it, and just trying to read it was like, when it comes to like, it says like bracket, link, bracket, and then it has like a bunch of numbers after it. It's like there's the topic, the subject, and then there's code words for it all. And I'm just sitting there like, I had to read the first chapter 20 times. I was like, my brain is not allowing me to understand any of this. I can know every single type of bird out there, but I cannot learn how to code. Yeah,
Goes right over your head. Do you remember MySpace? Are you old enough to have had a MySpace?
I remember MySpace, and I remember how awesome it felt when I had some friends on there.
But so I would get really, really into MySpace, and part of that was like kind of coding your own MySpace, the background color, the music that played, the little widgets that you would get for it. And like back then, I'm like, I am going to be a coder. I'm going to be a computer specialist. But getting into the real world is so confusing. Like, props to anyone who understands it, because it is not for me.
Yeah, it's weird to see how like kids have adapted to it. Like in my school, now there's no more textbooks. Instead of getting one assigned to you every year, they get tablets. So writing has turned into typing. And it's really weird to see that because I'm just sitting there like, you're never going to know what it's like to write something and get that pencil indent on the middle of your finger. Like you're never going to know what that's like. You know what a grippy is? Like, what's a grippy? I'm like, oh,
The
oh.
only reason I had decent handwriting in school.
I'm telling you, the best part was when you got your textbook, you either opened up the first page and there was a bunch of like, you saw, oh, that's my brother's friend or something. Like that was a weird name that was written down. You're like, oh, that's awesome. Like I knew them. I have their book now. And then you're flipping through and you'll see like, turn to page 42. Okay, turn to page 42. Turn to page 16. Okay, turn to page 16. Okay, turn to page 37. And then like there's a dick on the paper and you're like, oh my God, that was priceless. You can't do that on a tablet unless you leave them
That's
in like notes, but then it's like a long drawn out process.
Yeah. See, and I think a lot of people really hate the process of just technology advancing. If you really think about it and go back in history, way, way, way back, written word was everything. You only orally transfix things. Most people couldn't read or write. Like Abraham Lincoln's entire speech was an oral presentation. People sat for hours. I can't remember the exact amount of hours, but it was like an 8-hour speech. And people sat there and they listened. Can you imagine sitting for an 8-hour speech now?
I get forced to sometimes, but after like 20 minutes, my mind starts wandering off pretty hard.
Yeah, you said you had ADHD, so I get that. But people chose that. Like, that was a form of entertainment. And then there was reading and writing. And if you can find like articles and stuff, people being able to read and write is going to be the end of human civilization as we know it. People are going to get lazy and their brains aren't going to be as developed because they're going to have to be able to, they're going to be able to write things down instead of having to memorize them. Now we're like, oh, well, this is going to be the end of civilization as we know it. No one's going to be able to read or write. It's just all going to be, forced down your throat with tablets. You're just going to be typing. But no, it's just
An
sorry.
evolutionized way of kind of developing through. I got you. See,
Sorry, I went on a bit of a rant.
it's that's perfect though because we've as society like developing into writing in kind of longhand forms like that. They're like that's just going to make you even more lazy than having to memorize something because memorizing if you really have to like for a speech or something is a hell of a lot harder if you have no notes to go by. Like
Hmm.
one of the benefits I really like about school is the amount of culture you can receive, from different ethnicities to also different background. When I went to college, it was the first time I met a transgender person who wanted to be like, I've known him, been a guy for 10 months now, legally got his name changed. He's been on my podcast. His name is Dakota. But when we were talking on the podcast, he was like, hey, my name is actually Christina. And, and then told me her whole transition story. And I was like, I would have never been able to experience this if I did not go to college. I would have never even known. And it was a whole rationalizing thing. And she's become a fan of the podcast. Pardon my French.
No,
And
it's okay. You're taught to do something one way your entire life. The fact that you're actually attempting to do it correctly, that's a big thing for a lot of people.
I told him on the podcast, I said, if I misgender you, if I say anything, you correct me right then. And I've been doing that a lot in my life, at least with, we have foreign students. I work at a hotel during the day. So we have foreign students that come down on programs. So I got kids from Bulgaria, Romania that have been on the podcast. And everyone at their work calls them a nickname, like a pet. So if their name's Christo, they call them Chris. And it's just easier. I'm like, they're doing 90% of the fucking work coming to America and learning English and then trying to live with us for a short, brief time. We can at least take the 10 extra percent or more just to be able to meet them. And so I make sure I try to learn the language. I told them every day, write down 10 words of your language in the English translation. Let me do it. And I challenged myself to do that, but they felt more comfortable. They were more open to me about it. And I really loved like seeing that, because language, all these wonderful things that we learn, we all have the same teachings. We just need to adapt it in more of a kind of modernized way where we can all explain our thoughts and feelings and not feel judged or hurt.
Yeah. Well, like if you look at the mythology from different continents, different people, different like religions, everything, a lot of mythology you'll find is the same. Like there's a lot of different people that have like the flood in their mythology of their people, in the culture of their people. So if people would just sit down and listen, it would really change a lot of people's viewpoints on a lot of things, I think.
Aristotle, for example, a lot of what came out of ancient Greece, like he created the whole tragedy, comedy, all these types of playwrights, like stuff we use in modern movies and things, and that all came from him. He learned how to speak. He was very crafted with his words. And then Pluto being a philosopher, all the mystical stories and all these things, whether they're real or not, Atlantis. And it was like, it seemed like they were more intelligent, like Da Vinci, one of my favorites, being called an idiot all the time because he never finished anything. But that was his thing. His quote was, art is never done, just left unfinished. And he believed you can constantly be adding something. So that's why he never officially finished anything. The Mona Lisa is not even finished. And it's amazing to see the types of steps we've taken through education process, and also just the world a little bit in culture. Now I'm going to take a shot in the dark here.
Okay.
So you're studying in school. Is it philosophy or psychology?
Psychology.
All right. Okay. Because I took psychology too. So that was what I wanted to go for. And I got to go get my bachelor's for it. But I want to get, I think, a master's in psychology and then a minor in philosophy, because I really, I got something in my head from when I argued with two Jehovah's Witnesses that it immediately was like, I need to go into philosophy or something.
I'm minoring in psychology with a minor in criminal justice.
Okay, so that explains the podcast. That explains it for sure. Now, what fascinates you about the human mind?
What doesn't fascinate me about the human mind? I'm sure it's the same for you, but you can look at someone, you can people watch all you want, and you can wonder, what's going into, the small decisions you make in life. What made you pick a yellow tie this morning? What made you marry your high school sweetheart instead of trying to play the field? What made you, kill someone instead of just going to the police about a problem that you're having? People make small decisions every single day, and for the most part, we have no idea why they do that. We have no idea why they make the decision they made unless they tell you, and that's through their own lens. So
Well,
it's, obviously very biased.
once you dive into the world of kind of psychology, you start to self-analyze and self-diagnose everyone. You
Oh
start
yeah.
it becomes very difficult once you learn the methods and kind of strategies to understand, is this an environmental influence? Is this a cultural thing? Is this that something happened to them when they were a child and now it's imprinted into them and now they're, developing it? Or maybe that's a genetic factor. Once I started doing that, I started rationalizing, becoming a little bit more open-minded as a person, where I would see a person get angry in the middle of a store and be like, okay, let me see this. He's yelling because it's not buy two, get one free. It's buy something and then it's a whole nother deal. Let's try and look at this. Is that really something you're that angry about? Or maybe he's got something going on in his life right now that he's not processing or he's not handling effectively. So then you see the guy go to his car and he's got a spare on his car. Okay, he probably just experienced a flat tire and he's very overwhelmed that he has to fix his car. And nobody knows how to process things effectively. We're not problem solving as people anymore. We're pushing it away. We're pushing it
Hmm.
down to the next roadblock. And then when that roadblock hits, you're getting hit with double.
Okay, I'm gonna give you a what if scenario.
All right, let's do it.
You're working in a courthouse. You get a case where a gentleman parks his car in the middle of the street and the cops find him passed out drunk. He goes to court and he's being tried for DUI. What's your first thoughts on it?
Okay, hold on. Explain that one more time.
Okay, a gentleman is driving down the road and the cops find his car parked in the middle of the street. When the cops go to see what's wrong, the gentleman is passed out in his vehicle, completely drunk. They do like a DUI test, he's plastered. He's in court for a DUI, he gets off. Why do you think he was there in that car?
Hmm. Well, he probably drove drunk. Depending, if his car is parked in the middle of the road, it doesn't make sense because usually when you pass out, you don't have time to put your car in park.
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe he was. That's a riddle or something. I can't figure that one out.
I couldn't figure it out until I heard like what his excuse in court was either. So I interned full time, and this is a closed case, which is why I'm allowed to talk about it. Obviously, I'm not going to give any names
Well,
because
what
I
was
just
his?
want to.
You didn't tell me his excuse.
Oh, I'm gonna get. Oh, don't worry, I'll get to it. I was
Oh,
just explaining that I'm not going to give names and stuff, even though I know a lot of people want names, but I just think it's kind of rude. So the gentleman's excuse was that it's not that he had drove drunk. He was so emotional that he had to stop his vehicle right there in the middle of the road and start drinking in his car.
that makes perfect sense. That means he was probably experiencing something, and that was the only way he could deal with it. Because, yeah, I believe it. I mean, that if he gave me that excuse and told me, I probably would be like, I understand, because coming from a mental health and knowing like the emotional stress that people go to and then the outlets of addiction. Like I originally went to school for chemical dependency. Now we
Hmm.
can all agree it's not good to drive drunk, even if it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you want a taco. No, 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 no. It doesn't
Well,
work.
now I want a taco.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny because at 2 o'clock in the morning you want pizza or Taco Bell or something ridiculous.
Junk food, yeah.
That's why they're open. You're not sober at 2 o'clock in the morning going to Taco Bell. It's not happening.
No.
But like learning about like the types of addictions and the hold that it has grasped on you. I started it because opioid addiction is big in my area. Kids younger and younger were getting hooked on heroin and all these types of things. And I started going to these addiction meetings and doing all these things. And it's an outlet. It's a way to get your mind off of that. It's the same reason why someone stops smoking. They turn to food. They turn to um, anything, drinking a lot of Coca-Cola, any type of soda, anything to really wean their mind off of it. A type of sedative, I guess you would say.
Well, they're self-medicating. A lot of the times, you have some sort of trauma in your life or in your past that makes you just not want to think about it. And the easiest way not to think about it is to get yourself mixed up in some sort of drug.
So now what really a lot of people do not understand is that psychology and criminal justice go hand in hand.
Yes, they do.
So it's very good for diagnosing someone that might be mentally unstable, such as a serial killer like Manson. The first signs for a psychologist to kind of analyze if a person is mentally unstable is if they feel remorse. If they do not feel any remorse, that is a clear sign that they are mentally unstable.
See,
Um,
I would disagree because there's a lot of different types of mentally unstable. There's someone who believes that God told them to kill people. You can still feel remorse, but you're going to do what God tells you to do.
True, that's true. I'm talking about more on the fact that like someone that goes and kills and like, why'd you do it? And like, because I wanted to. That
So you
type
mean
of
like
idea.
actual psychopathy?
Yeah. So
Okay.
actual like dealing with people that have schizophrenia, for example. That is something a lot of people don't understand because their mind is a little bit warped. I remember I read a study on a kid that was only 14 years old, and he tried to set his family and his house on fire because he thought King Tut was outside of his house trying to kill him. And the only way to solve schizophrenia is through ECT. So electric convulsive therapy. It's to shock you when basically those types of emotions start to rise. It's the only kind of effective way that they've been able to manage schizophrenia besides taking medication, but even those don't last. For example, my buddy's mom had schizophrenia. She's no longer with us because even with the medication and going up with the dosages, she ended up it was too powerful for her. She ended up taking her own life. ECT so far has been the only thing that, if you can like look this up, is the only type of thing that has been able to fix it because it's the body's, well, it's really like mind control a little bit, kind of like MK Ultra, but more like when those emotions and those sensations that people experience with schizophrenia, such as like dysphoria or something where they start kind of feeling like they're going to go insane, you shock them and it makes the body kind of memorize whenever those things happen that this might happen. So it's like if you put a shock collar on a dog.
So you're talking about conditioning.
Yeah, so when like a dog runs out and has a shock collar on, they run past a certain point, it shocks them, they know never to do that again, even if the shock collar doesn't work anymore. It's the same
Hmm.
thing you're trying to do with a person. That has been the only true effective way of handling schizophrenia besides medication that ends up they build a tolerance to it, and then there's nothing you can do at that point.
See, my understanding of how shock therapy works, was that it is very small doses of electricity that helps to rewire your brain. To,
Sadly, that's not always the case. That's kind of the blatant term of ECT, but a lot of times with mental institutions, there's been a couple like Willowbrook and a few other places where the people, after doing the small little shocks, they're not seeing the evidence they want to see. And much like human nature, you want to go as full as possible to get the fastest result. And you're turning it up a little bit too high where people can actually experience memory loss. There's been cases of people that are actually 45 years old, but they think they're 6 years old because they've been shocked so much that they just forgot all of that.
okay, that used to be really common before there was, oversight like there is nowadays. If you look at shows like there's like the American Horror Story show, they had like an asylum one, and that one really showcases how conditions were in that time. Obviously minus all the demons and supernatural gumbo shumbo that's in the show.
The Hollywood
But
side.
yeah, the Hollywood side. People really were just being thrown in cells with other people that were very insane, but people who liked people of the same sex or were just a little bit too effeminate or just women who would not listen to their husbands or their moms or were too quote emotional would
Well,
get shoved in there.
Project Aversion. I don't know if you ever heard about this, but the government.
Aversion therapy, yeah.
Yeah, like, but the government went over to Africa trying to change people that were gay, and if they couldn't change you through ECT or other things of this sort, and like get you to actually try and fix your head by like torturing you, they would just change your sex for you. They're like, "Oh,
Hmm.
so you like girls, but you're a girl. Okay, well, guess what we're gonna do? We're gonna, add something onto you." And you're like, "What? This is not right." Like, they would do crazy things of this sort. I mean, from the Tuskegee syphilis experiments, honestly, the government, like, that's probably the biggest cult of them all.
In order for it to be a cult, they'd have to have a charismatic leader, and unfortunately, the government doesn't really have anyone like that.
Trump,
I wouldn't call him charismatic.
maybe in your eyes, but to some people,
Yeah, that's very true to
he's
some people.
building. See, I think my theory on Trump is he doesn't think publicity there is any bad publicity. You're mentioning his name, you're still talking about him, so that's good for him. And he's a attention getter. He's a celebrity. It's turned into that movie where Terry Crews is the president and they're using Gatorade to water the crops. That's
Yeah.
where we're going at this point. And it's funny because a lot of hardcore Christians believe in Trump and they are pro for him. And what I think it is because there's always two things the government was afraid of. So the people, but they could split the people up, easily distract us with something, war or something, or get our mind off of them. But they could never touch religion. Religion was way too strong for anything. The Vatican is its own country. Okay, just let that sink in. Now, recently, the Vatican just got raided. And not raided, but 4 of the priests there actually got arrested and their documents were seized. That has never happened before in history. So hearing that, and then also looking that religion is not, Christianity, Catholics, they're not the dominant religion in this country anymore because of immigration. All these people that are Jewish, all these people that are from a different heritage coming over here with a different religion bias. That's why they're all pro-Trump. It's because Trump wants to build a wall and keep the immigration out, which is at this point right now, there are more atheists than people that are Christian because of the new millennia that is coming. They don't believe. No kids our age truly believe that there's an all-powering God out there anymore. It's something different because we've been exposed to so much now. Back in the day, that's all they knew was a book. That's all they knew was sitting there and being with their community, listening, and then kind of deciphering it later in life. But we've been influenced at such a young age to be like, hey, that's not the norm. There's space out there. Elon Musk is shooting Teslas.
Yep, Teslas with little mannequins up in the air. So something that I found really funny when I was like doing research for like the podcast, obviously with all the cults and stuff, and it was cult plus time equals religion. And like if you really think about it, think about Mormons in particular.
Scientology.
Or Scientology, like Mormonism is an offset of the Christian faith. When Mormonism first came about, it was considered a crazy out there cult. But over time, they've gotten more members and became what I would consider a little bit more mainstream. And now people just think of them as a religion. No one thinks of it as a cult anymore.
It's better than. Have you heard what they do when they carry the necklace with the little oil lamp around their neck?
Yeah.
And it's supposed to bring somebody back from the dead.
I have heard of that. I haven't really done any like extensive research into it though.
They can't use it on themselves. So it's like if you're dying, you can't use it on yourself, but you're able to use it on somebody else. That's like a placebo effect, like taking a pill, and next thing you know, it works.
Yeah. And like as far as I know, there's no actual cases of that working.
I've dived into parody religions only on the concept of they all have really deep meaning to it. I mean, religion is just something that, it was created by something and we only listen to it because it's old. Anything that gets created now, it's not going to be nobody's going to pick it up around our time until it's like 20 or 30 years down the road. Then they're like, oh, it's older. Like Scientology, that's still kind of barely like in at all, but it's technically considered a religion because it was created in like 1970 something. So it was like, it's the whole fact, like as long as it keeps getting talked about for so many years, it can turn into something. And I mean, what I think with the Bible and religion, I think everybody is just getting the same picture of the big puzzle. I think everything has bits and pieces that are all correct, but everyone keeps diving it, making it their own story. When you see a Batman movie and then you see it get redone by another director, it's just some dude taking it and forming it into his way and then trying to build up a following with it.
Oh yeah. And like if you do research into most cults, it's going to be there was a religious book they grew up with and they decided that wasn't good enough and they decided to change it. And then that's where their religion and their offshoot came from.
So what types of cults have you kind of learned through, and kind of like if I had to say, what is your one favorite cult that you've learned about that you really think is like the craziest but awesomest?
100% the Rajneeshis. They are my favorite cult. I can talk about them from sunup to sundown.
Well, inform me on who these Rajneeshis are.
Okay, first thing you need to know is that the actual quote quote cult leader sucks. Like he's not in the picture. No one cares about, well, I don't care about him. I care about Sheila. So it started in Pune, India, and I'm going to kind of fast forward through his childhood. So they had kind of like a oasis, a Buddha field. Do you know what a Buddha field is? And they were having people come visit them from other countries, and they were making hand over fist money. Because unlike most, religious guru teachers, he was like, no, money's great. Sex is great. Why would you want to give up those things?
It's that yoga teacher that doesn't really seem like a yoga teacher. Like, is this actually a yoga pose? Like, yeah, just extend your back a little bit more. Do more of a downward facing dog. It's like, what are you doing back there, buddy?
I guess kind of like they didn't do yoga. They did meditation, but like a big part of their meditation was like screaming in the air and jumping up and down. I think it was called explosive release, and you just sit there and you just like at the
That
very
is in a
end.
movie. That is in a movie with oh God, what's his
They
name?
did do a movie on the cult.
The freaking the airplane that crashed on the island. Who's the guy that did the split with the two trucks? He had one leg on one truck and the other leg on another truck. But he was like, I want you to scream out your emotion. Everybody's screaming, and then it's like a small Asian guy, and he comes up, he goes, my mother would make pizza and wouldn't let me have any
Well,
because
now I
I
want
couldn't.
pizza.
Yeah, and then started screaming like all his problems. You just saw like all this emotional pain in this guy. You're like, but that is the thing though. Like if you scream out your pain, sometimes that works.
Hmm. But yeah, so the cult was in India, but obviously India was not cool with his free love kind of mentality because he was like, anyone should have sex with as many partners as they want whenever they want. It's not a big deal. So he had one secretary, and she could not find them new land to save her life. So then he goes to Sheila, and Sheila's like, I got you. And Sheila moves the entire cult to Antelope, Oregon. So from India to Washington. Well, no, Oregon. Sorry, my bad. So once in Oregon, they set up a huge compound. I'm talking airports. I'm talking hydroelectric dams. They had post offices. They had meditation halls. They had housing for all of their members. It was gigantic. Like, if you have time to look it up, the pictures, it's huge. It's a huge expanse.
And it's
Like, they
part of
took,
Oregon.
yeah, it's Antelope, Oregon.
And this is how many follow the cult?
I want to say it was around 30,000, but like it was a ton of people.
So
But yeah, they had
why do you
they had
find this one
airport.
so interesting? Because they just have so much structure now?
No, because of Sheila. Sheila. So the guy who like was the leader of the cult, Bhagwan, he decided that he didn't want to talk to people anymore. He didn't want to deal with the people that were members of his like organization. So he's like, you know what, Sheila, you deal with everything. So eventually, obviously, the townsfolk, this is like a small, really small retirement community, and they are not cool with these cultists being there. And like, there's a movie that comes out, and the movie shows like the stages of their meditation. And how PG-13 is your podcast?
You can cuss if you want. I shoot it like Joe Rogan. Just drop it if you feel it.
Okay. So during this movie, there is a scene during the meditation where there is sexual intercourse. And I don't know if it's consensual or not. Just like if you watch it, it's kind of one of those things where there's no talking beforehand. Some guy just grabs the girl, shoves her against the wall, and just starts penetrating her.
She liked
So,
it dirty.
or she didn't like it at all.
Exactly. Now, see that was a thing back in the day too. Like a lot of like there was at the original Longest Yard, you get to see God, what's his name? I can't believe I'm blanking on names today. He played Boss Hogg in Dukes of Hazzard. Oh my God, he has a beautiful mustache. It's
That's
not
not cutting it down.
it's not Tom Selleck. I'm trying to think who it is. All right. Well, he literally hit the girl in the face, and like in the beginning scenes where he's beating her up, that's him actually beating her up because she wasn't reacting right. So he's beating the living crap out of her, and that's just what they did back in the day. That's
Well,
what they would do.
these weren't actors; these were actual members of the cult that they
I
were
know.
videotaping.
But like people see that on screen, like, oh, they must be acting. Like, I don't know, that looks a little too real. I don't think anybody's that good of acting.
Yeah. So the townspeople, like, they try to disincorporate their town because the Rajneeshis are trying to take over. They obviously fail because the Rajneeshis way outvoted them. And the Rajneeshis want to, like, we need more power because we need more building permits to make more buildings to expand our compound. So they start poisoning people. they have like a medical compound, so they have like a salmonella on their hands, and they're giving handshakes to senators. They're putting it on doorknobs. Does not work. They don't poison a single person that way because obviously people wash their hands. So they're getting desperate. They try to assassinate a presidential hopeful. Also does not work. But finally, they commit the largest case of bioterrorism in the United States. They poison like somewhere around 700 people by putting salmonella in salad bars.
Oh my God. That's why they took out salad bars at Pizza Hut.
Well, this is why no one should ever eat a salad ever, but sorry. But Sheila's just really, really cool. She's the one who came up with all these plans. She was responsible for all of this. The entire cult basically was her. She would go on television shows and they'd be like, what would you say if people told you they don't want you here? They don't want you in Oregon. And she'd be like, well, tough titties on national television.
Oh my God. She's the revolutionary. She's the girl version of Trump.
Oh yeah. She's hella badass. She's badass for like a woman in the 70s to be able to get like to take that power and run with it, especially one that grew up in India. Like it's amazing.
Have you ever heard of the one called the People's Temple?
Oh yeah, who hasn't heard of the People's Temple?
Sorry, so explain a little bit what the People's Temple is.
Okay, is that the space alien one, right?
No, that one's a different one. So, all
I'm
right,
not sure.
I know you're talking about Heaven's Gate.
Yep.
We'll get to that one. Okay, because that's one of my favorites is Heaven's Gate. But people,
I haven't covered it yet because everyone knows so much about it. I feel like whatever I can add wouldn't be anything more than what people already know.
Well, I'll teach you maybe a little something. Well, People's Temple is actually where the phrase drinking the Kool-Aid kind of like, oh, you're drinking the Kool-Aid.
Oh, the people that moved down to Mexico and they were like going to get raided by the FBI. And he's like, everyone have some Kool-Aid, poisons the entire cult.
Yeah, well, it was basically in the 50s. Indiana native Jim Jones, he actually founded a church that promoted like socialism and equality with like Christianity, these types of like elements incorporated into it. And I guess he was a perfect salesman. Like he was very like charismatic, like able to trick people. He used fake healings and he would like he would do weird stuff like with chicken livers out of people's mouths and stuff. He would make them like it's freaky shit. More some cult stuff, obviously, but he demanded a lot of followers. So like in the 1970s, he actually moved to California and set up like a settlement called in Redwood Valley. So he eventually basically thought that there was going to be a nuclear war imminent, and his followers they would have to go to Guyana to kind of be free of like where the destruction would hit, be out of the potential danger zone. And like they lived for years with all these things, like all these people just forming this giant cult, and they would come out against like different churches and all these congressmen and things. And then they investigated them, and they ended up like he just convinced everybody to drink all this Kool-Aid, and it was a total of 918 people died in this incident. Like that was one of the biggest American losses in history before 9/11. Like it was a cyanide-laced beverage. Like you hear that, like what goes into so much of believing something that you would literally drink something you know is poison?
Well, did they know it was poisoned?
Yeah, he told them like drink up, drink up.
Did he tell them that if they died, they would go to heaven because he would guide them there, XYZ?
See, that's what Heaven's Gate did. So with Heaven's Gate, I actually did a podcast on Heaven's Gate thinking it was People's Temple, and I was actually wrong. So
That is the best, yes.
So Heaven's Gate was actually founded by Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles. I forgot. I think it's in the 70s too. 70s was a weird time. But
The 70s had a bunch of major players, like the Rajneeshis was in the 70s. It was and the Moonies too. So what it was this big old divide in the country. You had the stark traditionalists and the free love people. So people wanted to be separate. People wanted to be part of these, like one group or another. And if you're a stark traditionalist and you see these kids, doing the free love thing with drugs, rock and roll, whatever, you get angry, and that anger fuels you to find these friend groups.
Yeah, that's actually inspired one of like a parody religion, a little bit of cult following called Dudism from the Big Lebowski.
Yeah.
Which I'm honorary under the Church of the Latter Saint Dude, by the way. I got my degree. It's above my actual college degree. So it tells you what I show is more important. But with Heaven's Gate, it was crazy because the one thing I always questioned was like all these people went down into a mansion, 38 followers with Marshall Applewhite, and they all basically killed themselves in this house, but they did it in the slowest way possible. What they did was they took like this, it's like some mixed applesauce, like poison, and they all wore the same uniform, bought brand new ass Nike shoes, which doesn't make sense if you're going to kill yourself. Had the exact same amount of money in all their pockets, had the exact same amount of money, and they just put bags on their heads and laid in bed. And it took a total of 2 to 3 days. And then, like, I think it was like a week later, when the house got raided because someone smelled something coming from the place, they realized that these people sat there with bags on their heads and they died at different times. Some of them, it took 2 to 3 days to die. One would die on the first day, and another couple of people would die on the second day, and then there was like the last that died on the third day, and they got that from the rate of decomposition with the body. Like they would see it, be like, oh, this one died a little bit later than the others, and it was like, wow, imagine sitting in a bunk bed with your brand new ass Nikes with a freaking bag on your head, and your buddy below you is dead, and you're just sitting there waiting, thinking a giant UFO is going to take you to this new paradise, this new heaven that you're all going to be captured by aliens and whisked off to heaven.
So try to put yourself in that mindset that you totally believe this, that you believe that you need to do this in order to survive.
First thing I think is that there's something emotionally wrong with them. They're trying to fill a void or a gap in something that they had or experienced in their life.
Yeah, and that's the case for quite a lot of people. But people that are members of cults can be in for any number of reasons. They can be because, their dads didn't love them, or they work a really hard job and they want to get further in that job.
That's what I'm saying, environmental influences.
Yeah. When you go to join a cult, it's because they offer you something. It could be, money, it could be sex, it could be freedom, but they're offering you something that you need in your life. And then it just kind of spirals out of control, and they start taking that finish line and pushing it further and further back. And you start working harder and harder to get to that finish line until eventually the finish line is so far back that you'll do anything, including kill yourself.
That's literally like when you see people that experience a traumatic incident, like such as like a car accident or something, and they turn to God and become very religious. Or I know people that they're like, for one instance, this woman who's my manager at my work, her husband's completely paralyzed and has turned to God for her answer and her savior. Now I tell people, like, just because I don't understand it, like that's not for me, doesn't mean I don't understand it. I do understand that that's what you need. You had a sudden realization and something that impacted you in your life where you needed something to structure you and guide you, have belief in. I like that. That's why I try and stay as open-minded as possible. But it's crazy because, this is why I think parody religions are so big, is because I don't know if you know what parody religions are. Well, I'm an ordained minister under the United Church of Bacon. I have my certificate for it. I went to Maryland Courthouse where I live. I sat there for an hour, paid $45, and now I can officially marry someone under the Church of Bacon. But the concept behind it was we're following things that are just things we created. Everything is diplomas, all this stuff that we need to succeed in life. They're all just pieces. They're all just instruments that we've used and created. They don't mean anything in the long end of things. And I tried to rationalize that, like with people, like whole idea of Pastafarianism, where they worship a giant spaghetti monster. People are like, oh, that's a cult right there. I'm like, no, it's not. It's some dude that had a deep meaning. He started it because he wanted to highlight that they're just teaching Christianity in the education system back in 2006. So he was like, I want to give this so there's more religion. We're going to take that out. We're going to make it open to everyone. And they did. And next thing you know, there's a followers. There's also people like the Church of Euthanasia in Arizona, for instance. They believe that you should kill yourself for Jesus. But their message is so outlandish because they're actually environmentalists. They believe that if everyone on the earth died, the world would be not getting destroyed as quickly. They believe it would just come to a halt. And you hear that, you're like, okay, that's a weird way of getting your message across.
But are they wrong?
They're not. But see, the thing is, that's the point of the message. Kill yourself for Jesus is their message. Then you're like, what do these fucking people believe in? And you click on their website, it says it right there. We don't actually want you to kill yourself, but we just want you to wake up and realize that we're destroying this planet that we live on. And you're like, then why are you saying it? Because you're not going to click an environmental link unless you're an environmentalist. So we have to say an outlandish message that makes you look into what we're saying.
Yep.
It's all a attention grabber.
Yep. The people that are gonna, click that link are not the people you're trying to reach.
Yeah,
You're trying to reach Mr. F-150 Hummer over there. You're not trying to reach Mr. Prius Recyclables.
and it's crazy because that's all it is just a message getting across. Sometimes they have to do these types of ploys and things to be able to convince you just to understand and wake up. I watched, first of all, an episode of Bill Nye, the newer one, where he showed even if all humans died right now, all production, everything stopped, the Earth's already damaged. It's already going to have these buildings here. It's going to have everything on it. It's just going to stay there and degrade. Okay. There's no way of fixing. There's only a way of stopping the damage from getting any worse. We are got to kind of wake up and realize there's an energy around us all. We all send off each other's energy, vibe, all these types of things that we need to kind of pay attention to. It's why people can get so in belief of cults. And my theory that I think people get so susceptible to these types of things is because they're trying to fill something that's there. If you turn to God or religion when you stop drinking, if you turn to something, it's not that your mind is like a sponge and it's easily damaged. It's like, no, it's trying to find another way to cope with something so it can get its instance and its feeling and reaction off that one thing it was addicted to.
Well, yeah, and there's plenty of cults that aren't even religious based. Look at Nexum. Nexum was a self-help organization. Next thing you know, women are literally getting themselves branded because this guy asked him to.
That's new to me. So why
You
are
never
they
heard?
branded? No, I've never heard of Nexum.
It's actually fairly recent. He just had an upcoming arraignment date that got canceled and then rescheduled for July of 2020. So it was a self-help organization where a bunch of actresses and actors were a part of it. But the guy who, one of the people who founded it was Keith Raniere, or Keith Raniere, depending on what way you access his name and how to say it. So inside of that organization was a smaller organization called DOS. DOS was basically just there so that Keith Raniere could have sex slaves. You, as someone who was a member of DOS, you would give collateral so that they would have control over you. You would give them nude pictures of you. You'd give them recordings of you saying that your father sexually abused you as a child, or that your brother, is a pedophile, stuff like that. True or not, they would give you scripts sometimes because oh no, that's not good enough. Here, say your dad killed your mom. They just make stuff up, even stuff that wouldn't make sense. One of the women, Allison Mack, who was on Smallville, she had a contract that gave all of her future children to Raniere. That was part of her collateral.
I can't believe you just name dropped Smallville. I have never heard anybody else remember that TV show besides me. I thought it was the Mandela effect where everyone they'd never existed. I was like, nobody remembers Superman on TV.
Mm-hmm.
So what's actually pretty weird is if you look at Scientology, have you ever heard of Leah Remini's podcast with Joe Rogan where she actually goes into Scientology? This might be something you really might get interested in. So she calls the whole church out. She says all the weird shit they do, the fact that they keep tabs on other members. You're not allowed to have a drink 48 hours before a sermon, and you're supposed to go to a sermon every 2 days. So that means you can never have a drink ever, even if you're at a social arrangement. So that means when she would grab a glass of wine at a party or a marriage of one of her friends or something, there would be people that would be, oh, Leah was at the party drinking last night. Leah was doing this. There's a guy that was in the Church of Scientology that she mentions. I forgot his name, but he comes onto the podcast later and starts explaining that he has grandkids he's never met because his kids have isolated him, have completely cut him out of his life because he's not a part of Church of Scientology anymore. And he's like, they're so into the church, they can't see the rationalization that we're family. It's just, no, you're against the church, you're against me. And that's a ridiculous way. And considering that's not even that old. Like if you said that about Christianity or someone doing that with Christianity, be like, whoa, like, okay, like, I guess, like, because you would have kind of agree with it because Christianity's older, but Scientology's so relatively new. You're like, I can't, I can't follow that. What are you talking about? You're getting people against each other?
Yeah, that's a big part of like joining one of those types of organizations is first you join and they like make you feel really good about yourself and they tell you about like what you can accomplish. They promise you something really good.
Give you money, help you out of a bad situation.
Yeah, they give you something. Maybe it's like a belief that your job's going to get better, or a belief that you're going to find love, or that they're going to save you from internal damnation. They give you something. And then they start slowly cutting away the strings that connect you to everything else in your life. You know, a lot of cults, you'll quit your job and you'll work in the cult. You'll only work for the cult. Like everything you do, your wife will be a cult member, your boss is a cult member, you work at the cult, your kids, your family, the house that you live in is provided by the cult. So that way, if you even wanted to leave or were starting to question the teachings, what are you going to do? You're going to walk away from your wife and kids, your job, and leave with nothing?
I think it's all a question of one's loyalty. You know, the military does that too. Ukraine and all these things, they make you kill a dog, like a small puppy, something that you get like kind of have to monitor for like 6 months and kind of take care of. And they want you to kill a loving and thing towards you to see if you're actually devoted.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, I can't remember the specific cult, but this cult, it would like have your wife or your husband and they'd have them tied up with like a bag over their head and they'd walk into the room and hand you a gun and they'd tell you shoot him in the head. And of course the people would, because at that stage they knew how they were going to react, but it'd be obviously it wouldn't be loaded and they'd be like, good, you passed the test, good, congratulations, you kill your husband for us. So even if you do eventually leave the cult, you're going to forever know that you would have killed your husband for them.
Do you think that like these types of cults and these types of things are going to be more popular in today's society with things like Reddit and all these other types of forums? Like it seems like it's a lot easier for a message to get out there. I mean, we talk about technology advancing in the education system. Couldn't it advance in ways of kind of purporting or kind of distributing kind of warped evidence on like actual cults, like fake religions and stuff, and then turning that into something and hitting a wider grasp of people? Back in the day, I'm pretty sure before the 70s and all these types of things, like you heard about people because they were going to events where they would meet these people. Now it's like people can easily put on their phone and see some type of random thing on WebMD that tells you have stomach cancer, and you immediately think you have stomach cancer.
Mhm. So people think that if they find it on the internet, it's automatically true. This is like definitely the case with a lot of the older generation. Our generation is a little bit more, you know, like savvy. Like just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's true. Some stupid guy in his basement like made this up to get laughs. But it's 100% true. Like you sit there and you have like an idea in your mind and you search out people that have a similar idea. And it's easy to find them because not only are you hiding behind your screen, no one knows what you look like, but it's just a simple Google search. You can get into a chat room where people, you know, oh, the color yellow is a color associated with Satan. Do you agree? Yes or no? And you're like, you know what? The color yellow is associated with Satan. And you join the chat room, you join the group, you go to meetups, and the next thing you know, anytime someone's wearing yellow, you throw pig's blood on them.
Freaking WebMD, man. That is a cult right there. Every time I look up something on WebMD, it immediately goes to stomach cancer. And I'm like, well, I guess I just have this. I ate 2 boxes of Raisin Bran, and apparently now I'm getting stomach cancer. And like, it's crazy because I actually podcasted with someone from Brazil who's a journalist. He writes for a newspaper, and he talks about how web journalism has completely changed journalism in general, that it's actually creating it a dying thing. Not too many people are going for the newspaper anymore just because we have an easier option for our phone and articles. But the problem with this is, I think we all remember Spider-Man 3, where the dude was falsifying photography photos and then he lost his job and was discredited from joining any other newspaper article business in the whole area. He could never get a job into it again. The reason why was back then there was ramifications for writing something that was not correct evidence. Now a kid can put up an article on the internet, even if he's wrong, there's no ramifications towards it anymore. So now the web article people are now considered journalists, even though they're just some bloggers putting their thought out there without any actual evidence.
Yeah, everyone, you know, there's citizen journalism now. And just think about like the photography thing. just some kid with Photoshop could make almost any photo look like anything. You can add blood to someone's mouth and make it look like they're dead. It's so easy to fabricate photographs nowadays that I don't know how people do it. I don't know how people go about their lives just trusting things like that without at least getting a second source. Like,
And even going back in like history, finding like articles from Roswell, New Mexico with the alien, like the newspaper stuff, then falsifying those, like adding things to it and touching it up to make it look like this is what they really were hiding or something. You're like, holy crap, like you're literally creating a schizophrenic world. You're literally creating everybody to believe that there's something ridiculous out there coming to get them.
yeah. Well, unfortunately in America, a lot of journalism and people like that go to, it's entertainment. It's not there to give you information anymore. It's to entertain you, to keep you plugged in so that way they can get views, so they can get, their paychecks. So, you sit there and they're like, oh, all the illegal immigrants are coming to rape your children. And look at this like huge line of immigrants and they're all evil. They're all going to be criminals if they come to America. We need to build the wall because if we don't, they're all going to come here and America's life is going to be ruined. Everyone's jobs are going to get taken, XYZ. When if you actually listen and talk to the people, they're scared. They're running because they're running from the criminals. They're not sitting there trafficking drugs. They're holding their babies crying because they haven't eaten in a week.
Do
So
you
it's like
think?
you sit there and
Well, do you think that's what's popular about cults is the fact that they prey on the weak or the people that aren't emotionally sound?
I wouldn't say the weak or emotionally unsound. There's plenty of like really intelligent people that have joined cults. Specifically the Rajneeshi cult. Most people who were part of that cult had 4-year degrees. Like there was lawyers, there was engineers,
Well,
there were civil engineers that were
there's
involved
a
in it.
difference between street smarts and school smarts too, is what I
Yeah.
mean. A person that has street smarts and has a more rationalization and understanding of human compassion and understanding for how things actually work in the world rather than being just, have a degree under their belt. I've met people that have 10-year degrees and they're still dumb as shit. Only on the concept of they're very closed-minded individuals. They're very easily believed into their own notions. And I try and tell them, if you close mind yourself, you're not truly giving yourself the chance to anything, to learn anything, because you have to be open minded and understand that maybe if you can't rationalize that, somebody else can. And you have to understand that.
Well, I think there's different types of emotional maturity and intelligence. Someone who knows how to fish really good, who can flick, their lure into a cup 10, 20 feet away. That's intelligence. That takes skill, that takes time, or compared to someone who can do, advanced statistics just from their head. There's
Whoever can
different,
do a yo yo trick, those guys are sat, or solve a Rubik's Cube.
yeah, like all that stuff, people consider that, really intelligent behavior. But there's also things like a mom who can get all of her kids up and at 'em, dressed and out the door in 20 minutes. That's intelligence. That takes a ton of work too. You have to know the behaviors of all your kids. You have to memorize their behaviors every day. So it's hard to say whether being intelligent makes you susceptible to being a cult or being emotionally unstable, because there's people that maybe like I was saying with Nexum, people just wanted their careers to be better, and they had no people that were other like in their career field that were part of that organization that were doing good, and they just went there and they wanted to better themselves, and unfortunately, they just fell prey to someone who was very charismatic, who promised them exactly the right things and said the exact right things to make him believe it.
It's crazy because I think we've all in our lives have had a point of true weakness or true vulnerability to something, and then we've looked to someone who might have taken advantage of us. That happens a lot, and it's really sad to see. And it's really painful to experience because you put your faith in someone and then you end up getting taken the wrong way. And hopefully you find out that they're taking you the wrong way rather than being full belief into it to this day. You know, it's really, really hard because I think we're all looking for information and trying to find what's right out there. But it's difficult because there's so many opinions and views that if you try and side on with anything 100%, you end up finding out that it's not true.
Yeah, and think about how little it takes for you to trust someone. A cop walks up to you on the street and he's in his uniform. You're automatically going to go with him, and if he tells you to hop in his cop car. how easy is it to get a uniform and to get a cop car? Like, they give them out all the time. It's super easy to buy an old, Crown Victorian. It's Our society is built on trust. It's built on working together and having a community. Unfortunately, there's people that can take advantage of that. And it's not your fault as being someone who falls into that. It's that person's for taking advantage of you. You're not a bad person and you're not weak because you believe someone. You're doing what everyone else does all the time. When you go to start a new job, the job tells you if you work, we're going to give you a paycheck. You have no guarantee you're going to get that paycheck. You're just assuming that they're telling you the truth.
Now we talk about cults. We talk about all these little followings, all these kind of people-made cults. What do you think about the Illuminati?
I think it's kind of an interesting concept. And I think people give it a lot more mysticism than is really necessary.
Yeah.
Just same with like the Masons and everything like that. People think it's just, oh, these guys are secret puppeteers behind the entire world, where there may be members in really high positions that get ideas from that. But I don't think that one single organization is controlling everything behind the scenes. I think that's a bit naive to think that, everyone in charge is part of that one organization. There's probably, tens, 20s organizations that have a lot of control over politics or businesses.
Anybody that has a dollar,
Yeah.
can
You
throw.
have enough money.
I feel like a bunch of people in hoods sitting in a room, like just kind of sitting around a table, like, all right, this is what's going to happen with the world today. But it's more on the fact, like, when you look at things like Illuminati, shadow government, all these things, like, it's been hinted at before with JFK. I mean, 6 months before he was assassinated, his speech, the one that he was remembered for, the an eye for an eye will make the whole world blind, that whole thing. Well, he actually said, like, if there is a shadow government out there, that he would expose it. And then it was weird that he got assassinated like 6 months later after that speech. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, to think that what we're seeing and all these things that come out, like if you look up anything from the Freedom of Information Act that's supposed to give us all the information of what everybody's doing and all the correct stuff, we don't get any of that stuff until 20 years later, after the person that was involved with it is dead. MK Ultra, all these people that believe that's just a theory, whatever, it's true stuff. There are people that did horrible experiments with hospitals and all these types of things and did take advantage of people. But like with the government, it's all like Project Jedi. I don't know if you know what that is. I don't know if you know what Project Stargate is.
Mm-mm.
You ever seen the movie Men Who Stare at Goats with George Clooney?
Yeah.
That's a real government project that we
Yeah.
actually did. The movie Hollywood did it up. But that was an hour and a half away from me, and my mom went to that high school. I found that out 10 years after I watched the movie. So I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
oh my God, what else is true? So I went onto the CIA website and started looking up a bunch of stuff. I'm like, we literally have a center for existential risk, and it's $500 million a year funded towards them. It's like 4 people. And you know what they monitor? Fucking Skynet. Literally, that technology is going to advance to a point that it's going to surpass humans and threat our lives in existence. That's what existential risk is. So that's what they monitor. They monitor all new forms of technology, the next iPhone, all these things. They make sure that it's not going a process. I'm like, I'm in 100% belief of that. I think that people live religiously by technology too much. That can turn into a cult following in itself. It's given you so many adaptive forms of things, and now people want to take there's a disorder where people want to cut one of their arms off or something to get a robotic implant, to get all these implementations onto themselves. The world as a whole it's not the problem. The government, not the problem. People are the problem. It's not that we're evil. It's that we have a way about us where we choose the uneducated option, or we try and wean our problems off onto something else.
Well, people just want to feel secure. I'm sure you probably like living in a house or apartment. I don't know where you live. That's, fairly comfortable to live in. You
Yeah,
don't
when
want
it's
to.
70 degrees in my house and it's 20 degrees outside, I do enjoy that.
Yeah. People love comfort. They love feeling safe. And unfortunately, the world is a really unsafe place. There's serial killers that could literally just get you on the way out your front door in the morning, or you can get into a car accident. It doesn't have to be person driven. It could just be an accident. You know,
But how many times is that something that we created as people, though? Serial killers. They've been created. They were never born that way.
that is actually very much up into debate.
I debated on the fact of, I believe something happened in your life that got you that way. There's been
So
serial
you're more of a
killers.
nature person.
Yeah, I've
Oh,
definitely.
sorry, nurture person. My bad.
Well, I definitely think that like environmental influences, I don't think anybody's born with hatred or love in their head. I don't believe that. I believe that it gets adopted into them, kind of like a sponge. But so many people that are like, I know your sister was talking about the shoe killer, the guy that was addicted to shoes,
Yeah, the
like,
lust killer. Yeah.
yeah, the women's shoe thing. That's an adopted characteristic for his mom in the trauma that he experienced from, loving these things, and the fact that she was like, no, and would beat him. People, that forms the point for him to do that, because that shows where he was hurt as a child. A lot of times with serial killers and all these types of things is they're not understanding anything properly. They see something and they click onto it, such as like a television of a show of a guy murdering someone, or maybe experiencing the world hatred. We project this hatred as people out into the world. And we do that because we don't care about one another anymore. I started realizing this when we started living in fake connectivity. What I call fake connectivity is social media. All these types of things where you see someone complain about a Facebook post. Someone puts up a Facebook post saying, my day was fucking terrible. I wish, I had $1 million. And then like all you see is it gets 4 likes. Then they do the post again the next day. 5 likes, 6 likes, 7 likes, and so on, until the one day they post up something and it gets 2 likes. It didn't get all those likes that it did before, and now it's at a low point. So they take it off and they feel like they're not heard. And that's when depression starts to set in. See, the problem is we rely on people that really don't actually care what happened in our day.
It's a way of using external stimuli to make yourself feel better. Is
Well,
what you're talking about. So instead of, just talking to people or bettering yourself and looking into yourself, to see like what's making me not happy, you're like, if I post something, people like it. They really like me. They care about me. And you talk yourself into it. And then, something bad happens, like your account gets disconnected. All of a sudden, all that external force that made you feel loved and made you feel appreciated, it's gone. And people can go completely off the rails when that happens, because instead of loving yourself and having something to build yourself up, you try to use that external force in order to give that to you, to give you some sort of ego.
well, like we said, we're building a foundation of ourselves on fake connectivity. That same complaining and that same emotional hole you're trying to fill with social media could easily be solved with talking to someone that's close to you who's actually going to listen to you. One person, just one, doesn't need to be 50 likes. It's just one person sitting there and going, rationalizing it and talking it through with you, where you understand, wow, like we have a social skill as people, but we've adopted this disconnect from everyone's lives, even our own family. The average dinner only happens 3 nights a week for the American family that used to have it 7 nights a week. It's
See, that's
because
not necessarily like a social thing. The back when families were actually having dinner, it was only the father that was working. So the mom would sit there and cook all day. So there would be dinner on the table. Unfortunately, just with the economy the way it is, most families have 1 or 2 parents working or live in a single family home.
that's what we talk about, like environmental influences, though, because then that all plays into a factor. It seems like the way we're setting ourselves up as a country and as people, we're like, at least in this country, we're focusing on things that shouldn't be focused on. Instead of focusing on what's popular, what's trending, and all these things, we're not worried about issues that we have in our own country with our economy. And this all plays a factor into how we're living our lives every single day. The ability of what we have is freedom, the ability what we have is this and that. So I get so many people from like Africa, Australia, that go, you guys have a gun problem. We don't have a gun problem. We have a people problem. We have a thing inside of us where, And I do fight the side of America, especially when someone from another country is like, you guys are just shooting each other on the street. I'm like, it's mean world syndrome. We're constantly being fed bad information through news, all these types of things where we experience hate on a daily basis. You know what happens when you don't experience any type of conflict in your whole day? You go home and you watch reality television. You watch something that creates a false drama. So you feel that need. I remember days where I wouldn't get into an argument with anybody when I was a kid and be like, wow, today was a really weird, easy day. And I just go home and watch Jersey Shore. And I'm like, afterwards, I wanted to stab a fork in my eye because I was like, oh, that's right. There's conflict out there. You do need it. You do need conflict to get stronger. In some instances, someone that has nothing builds themselves up to have a lot of things, and, always be aware of that. But at the same time, you also need to learn about a little bit of and type of energy and a wholeness as people. Spend the time saying, hey, or spend the time doing something that might help somebody or pull them out of a slump.
Mhm. Well, it's the difference between that and like healthy discord, where you're having a healthy conversation that's not centered on you trying to browbeat your opinions into someone else, which unfortunately people get reinforced with their own opinions a lot. People like to hear themselves, so they look up like, is the color red bad? And they see it on the internet, oh, the color red is bad. All these people think so. So now when I go talk to someone and they tell me the color red isn't bad, I know that they're wrong because other people reinforced my own beliefs that I was just trying to reinforce for myself, confirmation bias. And that's just, that's why people can't have conversations nowadays, is because they just want to hear themselves talk. They don't want to actually learn or listen to anything.
We're very opinionated as people, which I took the time to kind of fix in myself, at least hopefully at a little bit of a younger age, and I'm still trying to do today. Just at the fact, like being open-minded, trying to understand it from another person's perspective. When you get into an argument, understand where they're coming from, but also realize, there is a right and a wrong, but try and rationalize and maybe meet in between. The same factor is we're opinionated as people. We never want to give someone the ability to talk. And,
Well, people don't want to be wrong.
well, the fact is, you look up evidence on something. You're like, is the color red bad? And then you find an article, like 5 pages down or something. It's like it's supportive of your view. See, I'm right. I'm right. I knew it. It's like, but you're not. You just looked for the answer you wanted.
Yeah, it's called confirmation bias. And it's literally in everything in the entire world. If you're a teacher and you go in thinking that all your students are trying to get one over on you, a student comes and is like, hey, I missed this assignment. Do you mind opening it back up for me? As a teacher, you're like, no, because you're just trying to get one over on me. You decided not to do the assignment. Now you're going to live with the decision.
Or maybe I missed it.
Yeah, or maybe it's just human error. There's not a job that I know that doesn't accept a little bit of human error.
Yeah, nobody's perfect. Humans are the best thing about us is that we're flawed. We have these amazing things about us that are completely different, but we're never 100% good at anything. Where the problem is in society today, we're trying to live a structured life of Jim that works the 9 to 5 and is perfect in every single way, just goes home, goes to his job, goes home, goes to his job, feeds his wife and kids, all these types of things. I'm like, what? That's not us. People are meant to do some pretty stupid shit, and that's what makes us inspiring. That's what makes us go and discover things. It's what makes us be innovators, entrepreneurs, all these wonderful things about us. Everybody's got something they're super passionate about that they can light up immediately when you start bringing up. You just got to see that fire in your eyes. And every time I podcast with someone and I see that, it's like, damn, it's like, I love it that you're interested in 19th century Victorian surgery. That was my buddy. And I was like, who the fuck is it? What is that? I don't even know what that is, but teach me. And it's fun to see that light up, like for you, like loving, just the idea of cults and stuff. And then going and first of all, starting a podcast with your own sister. Like I was talking to her, you'll see a lot of days. This is a way of them to still stay connected instead of maybe having a phone call conversation or something. It's another way of you guys being able to talk, but also get your thoughts out there too. Because half the time I say something that's not recorded, I'm like, damn, I wish I had a recording of that because that was
Especially if it's like a good thing and you're like, oh man, I wish I could write that down.
yeah, I remember so many times, like I'm at like Applebee's or something at a dinner with some friends, and somebody will say something. I'm like, why don't we have this recording right now? Like, this is perfect conversation. I'm not going to remember it like an hour from now.
I know. And you're like, I just had like the best one liner in the entire world, but okay, I guess it's off into the universe now.
And it really sucks when you say a one-liner and someone misses it, and then you have to say it like 6 more times, and
And
it's
then it's
just
not as funny. See, and that's also our generation wants things to be recorded. We don't want to be forgotten. There's so much out there, so many things that are just so exciting and so amazing that you want something in your everyday life to be recorded just to prove that you existed.
Yeah, you don't ever want to feel like you left this earth and nobody's going to remember you. You want to feel like there's always a piece of you out there. You know, I believe everybody has thoughts and stuff that should be expressed, but I do believe that everything should be taken into an account, like it all shouldn't be kind of just thrown out there like, I'm right, you're wrong. I'm right, you're wrong. It's like, no, have an opinion. Don't just shove it down somebody's throat.
And specify that it's an opinion. I get so annoyed when someone tells you something that it's like it's a fact, and you're like, oh no, actually, this is what's happening. Like, well, it was my opinion. You didn't say it like it was an opinion.
You said it like it was fact. There's a difference between fact and fiction.
Exactly.
The Dewey Decimal System I never use. That thing I had to freaking learn. Like it
Oh,
doesn't
I
help me
remember
anywhere
that.
in life. There's
Mhm.
so much stuff that you were taught in school. Like I said, the education system would be a million times better if they just asked kids what they wanted to learn. Not on the basis of, what do you want to learn today? I want to learn how to play video games. No, let's throw you into a technology class then. Let's get you involved into that. What do you like to do instead of calculus? I'm not really good at math, but I like to work with my hands. All right, throwing you in wood shop. All right,
Yeah.
bam.
I like being outside. Okay, you want to be a biologist? Let's go. You want to go into geology? Let's do this.
What do you like?
I really loved rocks as a kid. I had a rock collection. I took a geology class, absolutely hated it.
I had a pet rock and he didn't do shit.
Interesting. I feel like they do that. I'm gonna have to pause the recording for a minute because I need to put my laptop on a not battery pack. What am I thinking of?
Hold on. You mean like, okay, so you just said you can look at someone's brain
Yep.
and tell if there's, okay, so I've actually heard about this before. It's like a certain type of, um, I guess when they take a scan of a brain in a picture, it kind of lights up like there's reds, greens, yellows, and like when you're given a brain scan, and there's a certain part or area that is either lacking or a little bit duller that can actually show mental health issues.
Yeah. And there's a bunch of things it can show. You can show depression, it can show ADHD, it can show, post-traumatic stress disorder. But there was a doctor who did a bunch of brain scans of, he did brain scans of known criminals with criminal activities that were in jail. He did him and his friends and family. And he's looking at these brain scans and he's like, oh my gosh, I found one. This guy right here, he's a psychopath. Who is this? And he goes to look up who it is. It was him. So he's talking to people, his friends and family. And they're like, yeah, you didn't know? And he's like, well, I'm not violent. I've never killed anyone. I've never wanted to kill anyone. And they're like, yes, but think about how you go about getting what you want. And he was like, he was like a kind of like a retrospective of him thinking about it. And he's like, I'll do anything to get what I want. I will sit there and kiss anyone's ass. I will be someone's best friend, but I will only do it if they have something that I want from them.
See, this is crazy because, like you said, post-traumatic stress disorder. I've actually seen a picture of a brain that experiences post-traumatic stress disorder, and it's completely highlighted red in like the back parts of their brain.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we don't understand that mental health is it's a actual relative thing, and that doesn't mean that certain people can only get it. That means that everyone can get it at some point in their life. You can develop mental health issues. Alzheimer's, all these types of things. I actually found out, a doctor told me, I don't sleep ever because I'm an insomniac, but that's probably because of my ADHD. There's just
Oh
no
yeah,
need.
definitely.
I can sleep. I mean, I'll be out of energy for like 10 minutes and I'll be up again. I actually plan on being up at 2 o'clock in the morning soon and podcasting with a person in Africa. So I plan on, my day's set. I just use it to my benefit to turn it into something. But he started telling me, he's like, by the age of 40, if you keep going this way and not getting your full functional sleep, you'll actually start to develop Alzheimer's at an earlier age. It's very common with people with ADHD and insomnia. They develop this. And I'm like, why would you put that in my head? Why? Why would
Have
you
you
do that?
tried melatonin?
I've taken a 50 melatonin at a time. I've taken injection of through like an actual like needle to actually get some liquid in there to kind of put me to sleep. It does not
Mm-hmm.
work. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't last long. There's days, and like, I mean, I can brew up a pot of coffee like this right here. I can go right to bed afterwards. Caffeine has no effect on me. Nothing. And it's this type of stimulus in my brain. And I actually got my blood levels tested, and they told me I have a low serotonin level, which is the chemical that produces sleep and like helps with like drowsiness and all these types of things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, kind of like bananas are filled with it too.
It's like
And
the calm, feel good chemical. Yeah.
yeah, they're like, your brain naturally doesn't produce that much of it. So it's like you have to find it in another source. And I'm like, I can eat 50 bananas and I still don't feel like going to bed. You know, I can eat a pasta dinner and still, I might not want to move, but I can still not go to bed.
Well, if there was a serotonin issue, obviously I'm not a doctor and like maybe talk to an actual doctor, but usually people that have serotonin issues, they take like antidepressants, anti-anxiety medication.
Well, this is common with people that want to be a therapist or psychologist. They actually, most psychologists and people that want to be like therapists, they experience a mental health disorder, which gives them a better rationalization. And it's really weird because a lot of people go, why are you going to treat me if you can't even treat yourself? It's because they can understand the perspective, but they can't give themselves the tools. That's why you'll see a therapist that goes to another therapist, you know? um, it was common for me because there's such things like with psychic abilities known as empaths, people that feel emotion and energy around them. I believe we're all empathic, but people are stronger with it. I've talked to people that have psychic abilities, you know, and full belief of that. And I've done some shit I can't explain, but I think the world has layers to it. And I think everyone's usually on a different layer. Not like me and you are in individual layers, but like the same fact that we all have something about us that is a little bit different than the other in our genetic coding and all these wonderful things about us. And like being empathic, being able to kind of sense emotion and kind of be aware of others people's feelings, making me a little bit more sensitive, but also making me more human. I have a deep caring for holding open the door and being able to be nice to someone, even though if I don't agree with them or I'm mad at them. It's still an overall caring that I think the world needs to become a little bit more empathic in a way.
Yeah, I completely agree. Too many people just worry about their own lives and their own day-to-day activities instead of sitting there and thinking, well, this person's upset. Why are they upset? Not just being annoyed because, they exist and have emotions and have feelings.
If you were going to start a cult,
Oh God, yes.
you thought about this.
Constantly.
Okay. Take me through it. What's the name of it? Teach me what are you guys doing? Are you guys drinking Kool-Aid? Which flavor? Come on, I want to know it all.
So me and my friends were, weirdly enough, me and my twin sister and a friend of ours were driving up to Lake Tahoe for our birthday, and just we were listening to a podcast, Lost Without a Trace, this like season 2, and they were talking about like cult beliefs or something, and then we started going into like we're gonna have a cult and everyone's gonna need to dance, and like the main thing with the cult is that you need to dance to feel good, and if you aren't dancing you're not feeling good, and that we're going to sell like crystals and rocks because people already believe in crystals and rocks, but we're going to specially bless them. It was not like a good ideology. It was like a playful ideology. Obviously, I don't think we'd ever actually do this because it's dumb. But I don't know. It's fun to think about. It's something that's really fun to be like, if I was going to form a religion, if I was going to form a cult, like, what would I do? Just like, just see what I could get people to do.
It's like running for president. You got to form a campaign. You got to have all these things to it. Like we got merch. If it has merch, then it's credible. That's all it is now. If it's got merch, if it's got T-shirts, it's like that's a real religion. They got shirts on it. There's a
Yep.
religion called the Invisible Pink Unicorn.
Oh, yeah.
And you know the basis of it is?
That everywhere surrounding you, following you, everywhere is an invisible pink unicorn.
Exactly, but you know why? It's the two contradicting things is in the name. It's an invisible pink. So it's like, first of all, if it's invisible, then how can you tell what color it is? Oh, it's all questioning. It all opens up a bigger and has a deeper meaning to it. You know, I love that type of stuff because I was like, I would I would hate to say it, but I would probably be the guy that would get adopted into a cult, but just not know he was in it.
See, I'd want to join a cult, but I want to join a cult and like write notes. I'd be sitting there like investigating them, being like, "You believe what? Why
Just
do you believe that? How do you feel about that?"
just analyzing everyone.
Yeah, which is the only reason I'd want to start a cult is to see how far I could push people. Like I'd be illegally experimenting on people. Like I don't want to be I don't want to be a grandiose, charismatic leader that has everyone like doing my bidding for me. I just want to see like what's the craziest thing that like I could get someone to do.
Okay, so I got a pretty good story.
Oh
So
yes.
it's not from me, my perspective, but my mom has this friend, and she used to like I did not know about this guy until Christmas Eve. Okay, we were at my aunt's house, and she was throwing this giant Christmas Eve party because apparently they're awesome. I've never been to one, but this last year I actually went. So now that I'm older, 21, I was able to drink, but I just chose not to. And I'm sitting there listening, and this guy's telling me this story. He's like, dude, I was involved with a bunch of what they call Wiccans, and it was like a cult, dude. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, all right, so I was 20 years old. And he starts naming kind of the area and describing the places that I know around here, like through Ocean City. It's like a small beach town. And he's like, dude, they took me into their house. She brings me upstairs. It's just her. I think, oh, we're about to get freaky. And it's this like 55-year-old guy telling me this story. So I'm looking at him like, all right, dude, this is already like, I'm already like, are you lying to me right now? You just messing with me, pulling my leg? And he goes, dude, she put me in a room. She goes away, like goes into the bathroom. I think, oh shit, like it's time to get busy. So he takes off all of his clothes except his boxers.
Oh, honey.
She said, close your eyes while she was in the bathroom. He goes, okay, closes his eyes. This is all him telling me this. And he's saying it in front of my mom. My mom's like, he said this story the exact same way in exact detail. And I swear to God. And then he named the woman. And my mom's like, she wrote for our newspaper. There's no way. He's like, I swear to God. He goes, she came out in a black robe with a group of other people that came up from a different door, just from the upstairs. And his eyes were closed. Next thing you know, he said he was intoxicated. He was tied to a chair and they were throwing fake blood on him. And they had him in a circle. It was like a satanic cult. He broke free, jumped out the window. He complained about losing his like $40 loafer or something that he said he had to go golfing the next day or something. And he goes, jumps out the window. He goes, I just called my buddies to pick me up, and they ended up picking me up. And it was the weirdest thing ever. And I was like, there are people out there that probably have a belief in that. Like your closest neighbor could be a cult follower.
But also, counterpoint there. What if he was super drunk? Some girl walked out of the bathroom in a black robe, and he's like, "You're a witch! You're a witch!" And
He
then jumped
went
out the window.
he went full on, like he goes, I know how drunk I was. She came out in black robes with a group of other people in black robes. They had
Mhm.
chicken blood the whole 9 yards, and they were
Yeah.
flicking it on him. I was like, I don't know if you could get that mixed up with a bathrobe though.
I don't know. I've seen some real drunk people think some real stupid stuff happened. But I do like cults, so I am inclined to believe that maybe something cool happened to him.
I was thinking maybe they did, because there are all of these things known as Wiccans and type of witchcraft type stuff, and that is what they kind of do. I mean, it's crazy how when it looks at like hardcore metal or rock or something, it all deals with like the satanic cult a little bit. They say like, oh, that's a cult thing. That's because you worship Satan. I'm
Yeah,
like,
the occult.
yeah, like there's the band Tenacious D with Jack Black. He actually has a song called The Metal, and it inspired a video game called Brutal Legend. And it makes this metal god, like it all goes back into old satanic times, like all these dealings with like, powers and witchcraft and things. And these are then things that have been known throughout our history too, magic, devil worship, all these types of things. I think when you say cult, people don't realize it's not always dealing with Satan or the bad. Sometimes there's positive cults too, cults that go on to minimalizing things and all these types of like Buddhist monk beliefs as well. In China, dealing with astral projection. I don't know if you know what that is, but projecting yourself outside of your body in a form of meditation where you can float and kind of go beyond your human bounds, I would say. It inspired a thing of the movie Inception called One Aeronautics, where people could literally believe that they could go into your dream.
Hmm.
I think it's all, interpretation of how we're trying to kind of understand life. And the weird thing is about believing something is once you believe in something 100%, it's so hard to shake that belief at all.
Did you know that the modern satanic, like Satanism, like religion, doesn't actually worship Satan?
I what do they worship then?
They don't worship anything. They are just anti-establishment. Like the whole reason they have that motif with like the blood and like then like the bull heads or with the horns is because they're anti-establishment. They want to shake things up. They don't want to stick with the status quo.
That's why anarchy is so popular,
Oh, yeah, they're anarchists,
because people feel like they're being suppressed all the time.
which you are, but that's just part of living in like a society. You give up freedoms in order to get protections.
And you have to live by a certain code and ethic too.
But yeah, and like that's what I mean when I'm saying like to give up freedoms. Like it's when you don't kill someone, that's giving up a freedom. When you don't drive over the speed limit, you're giving up your freedom to speed at whatever speed you want to do. but you're doing it because you want to be safe and you want everyone else on the road, maybe someone who's not as good of a driver as you are, to follow those same rules so you can be protected.
And this is what causes people to break the speed limit when they see someone else do it, because they believe that if that person doesn't have to follow rules, then why should they?
Exactly. I think society is just balancing on this knife point constantly. Think about how easy it is for riots to happen. Your football team loses and all of a sudden everyone starts flipping cars.
We're a Jenga tower. We just keep pulling blocks and not placing them back. We're just pulling them, and eventually the foundation is going to crumble, because the foundation that we're built upon was shady in the first place. It wasn't. It was built upon lies and taking things of what we wanted and hurting others to get us there. It was never the right process. We don't even know the true story about Christopher Columbus, because we're only taught in school that history. We're only taught the glorified version of it.
Yeah, because they don't believe children can deal with all the blood and the gore. And like, obviously, the further you go through the education system, the more they're like, yeah, he killed people. Yeah, he gave poison blankets. Yeah, he raped women. But we dumb it down for children, and people don't realize that a lot of time that K through 12 education is the only education people are getting. So they believe, no, Christopher
If
Columbus
they're
was a great
lucky.
guy. Yeah, if they're lucky, a lot of people drop out.
Yeah. And it's like when you ask your teacher nowadays, it's like, what do you think about the Bible? This reference, this reference. And they're just like,
I can't speak about that.
it's, you guys are at the age where you guys could know that, it's sometimes it's just a little bit story told up a little bit to go across a certain way. Like, it's like, what? It's like, but we're supposed to believe this entirely, that Noah had all these animals come onto the ark, and you're telling me that that might not possibly be true? Like, I don't know what you want to say. We're just in believing it because that's what everybody's done, and that's what we keep on doing. Nobody wants to change anything.
Yeah, and it's like what we were talking about earlier. People want to feel safe and protected. People don't want to believe that something that you had your entire life that your parents taught you. Why would your parents ever lie to you? Is something that's wrong or untruthful. People just want to feel safe. They want their truths to be their truths and to be everyone else's truths.
Kind of feeling just in our ways, though, like just being set in our ways, like not being able to kind of diverge. Like when you see an older person trying to adopt technology and just give up on it, like, I don't need it. It's the same thing. Like, there's stuff that we adopt that we can kind of fall grasp to, and then we never change our mind and our opinions from it. And this is why I think that we need to be more of an open society, not be so opinionated, but be more open-minded.
Yeah, because doing the same stuff day in and day out may make you feel safe, but you may not experience something. How often you go to a restaurant, you find a meal that you like. Every single time you go to that restaurant, you get the same meal.
Yeah,
You
and
order
then
the same drink.
you never, yeah, you fall into a routine, and that's the problem. Is we need to start changing it up as people, because that routine becomes the gym that works 9 to 5, where you just work, go home, go back to work, go home, go back to work, go home. I did that for years. I did that for, like 3 or 4 years out of high school. Actually, I think it was 5. I was an introvert. And then I was literally going to work, going to the gym, taking school, going home, going to work, going to gym, school, home. Worked out every single day. I have for almost 7 years now. And I needed to wake up, because I isolated myself from people. I saw all my friends drinking and realized I don't drink. So I can't do these social events with people, but it doesn't mean I can't hang out with friends. That doesn't mean I can't become social again. And it took forever for me to get it, but I finally got that kick in my ass to go. The problem is we never want to break out of our routine because it's not comfortable to us. We're living in a comfortability factor now, rather than chasing on the dangerous aspect of things. Nobody wants to go without a paycheck because they're afraid that they might not get something. Sometimes you need to go with that fear to be able to chase after it. Sometimes you need to put yourself in a hard place to come to an even better spot.
But I think our generation is a lot more comfortable with change, especially compared to, your parent who stayed at the same job for 50 years. People aren't doing that anymore. I have a friend who works, lives in San Francisco. She's crazy smart, crazy amazing, has not stayed at the same job for more than 3 years. She's constantly moving. She worked for Google at some point. Like, she's a smart person. She was in Google. Like, that's a lot of people's dream end to be all job. But she switched. She's gone through so many different jobs, and it's not because she's getting fired. It's because she keeps changing jobs in order to get higher up on the list, because you can't stay in one place anymore, because you'll never get a raise. You'll never get extra benefits. They'll just keep you at that, bottom barrel forever.
I think you're seeing a little bit less innovators nowadays, and you're seeing more people that are being kind of suppressed, mostly because of the older generation, like your parents and stuff, trying to instill onto you to have a backup plan, kind of work and be comfortable while also trying to do what you actually want to do. And the problem is people, when we get suppressed, we're going to end up breaking out from it. We're going to end up crying about something, and it happens. And the thing is, it's our lives. It's each person has their own keys to their car to drive it. You can tell them what to do, you can give them advice and stuff, but overall in the end they only have the tools to be able to take it where they want to go. If they want to go left, they're going to go left. You can suggest take a right because the left is a dangerous route, but they're not really going to truly listen until they experience it themselves and see it from that aspect.
Yeah. So I have to ask, is that Fallout posters on your wall?
Oh my God, everyone says it. Yes, thank you for noticing. Isn't it awesome? Special. I love that because when I was I'm like I said, a fan of psychology, but all the stuff that I was finding fascinating when I was a kid came from stuff like that ended up I learned more in psychology. I was like, oh shit, it's all about some human special skills that we have. Special strength, perception, endurance, intelligence, agility, and luck. Like these are all things. I just love the whole character creation idea. You
Oh,
know,
I love creating characters. There's literally nothing better than creating characters.
yeah, make them super strong, be able to hit someone in the head, knock their head off. I love that.
So this isn't something that I've talked about yet, but I'm also really big into Dungeons and Dragons, which is like kind of a weird thing.
I gotta hook you up with my buddy who does an all it's called All D20. It's an all Dungeons and Dragons podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Revolutionized my way of thinking of what Dungeons and Dragons is. It's all storytelling, and I would be amazing at it. The way my brain takes such rabbit holes and stuff.
Well, yeah, and like one of the most exciting things is when you build your character. You obviously decide what class you want to play and the stuff that's going to go better for that class. But you decide like my character really likes this, so they'll do anything for this. And then role playing that and seeing how it goes is really, really fun. Like I am playing with a guy right now who he is a character who really likes tiefling women. Like that's his character's thing. So if like a tiefling woman asks him to do something, he's just gonna do it, and he has no choice. Like that's just him now.
Well, that's what the funny thing is about like video games, is that it's given us an escape from this reality that we have. You can't do things I can't grow 6 arms. I can't do any of this, but I can play a video game where I can create a character that can do that. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of Oblivion, Skyrim, all these older style games. Then I do like Fallout and all this, but it's all about creating your own character and then being able to do what you want with that character. Like we come from a society, like I said, it's suppressed, but we're limited to the freedoms that we do have. I can't just run out into the street and, decide I'm going to fast travel to China. And the next thing I know, I open up my watch and bam, I'm in China. It can't happen, but it can happen in a video game. It can happen in a quick instance where it's not going to change my whole life, where I can still go to work the next day.
Well, I think also like a really really cool thing about video games that a lot of people really enjoy is that you see instantaneous growth from your actions. You sit there, you're playing Sims, you read a book, you instantly get higher intelligence and you get better job opportunities because of that.
That's one of my favorite games right there, Sims, and that's where I learned about the social skill. Because if you look at all the other skills, they all downgrade really, really fast. Like they all degrade like quick. Like you have to go to the bathroom, quick. You have to go, eat food, quick. But the social skill is the slowest one. And then once that social skill, like if you make a sim, make them live in a house all alone, ooh, after a while, he gets really depressed. You start to see change. I think that's a
Mhm.
game more people need to learn about. A lot of people surprisingly haven't played Sims. And I'm like, you've never played Sims? And they're like, what? Is that where you can build your own city? I was like, no. I'm talking about the personalized one where you build your own family, you build your own person, you get to live their life and, go get a career and all the aspects of stuff. That's a great way to form a child into understanding what the world is kind of like. Maybe not with the stupid stuff like the karma and stuff you can do, but the same aspect of, there are bills you have to pay. Yeah, there are utility costs. There are jobs you have to go. There are ways that if you emotionally attack you in your job, that can cause it to downgrade and get fired, and also upgrade and get promoted. These wonderful things.
Yeah, it's so cool because You can sit there and be like, I really want to do this career. And then you can also, there's cheat sheets. You get to Google what would make you get that career field and what like your scores need to be to do that. Where in real life, you can't do that. You want to say like, I want to be a lawyer one day. You may work towards that goal, but there's no guarantee, no fast pass, no like guide to how to get there. You're just kind of bumbling through it, hoping for the best.
And it gives you an easier way to be able to kind of get a taste of what that's like and see if that is maybe for yourself. It's like a job simulator,
Mm-hmm.
I played farming simulator. Fuck, I do never want to be a farmer ever. I
It's
never.
hard work.
I understand it's hard work. I can do actual physical labor, but sitting there and trying to get in all the machines and the whole processes and tasking of even setting up before you get to go. Oh, no way. My buddy's an actual farmer and he loves Farming Simulator. He paid $80 to get the new Farming Simulator. I'm like, there's so much other stuff you could be playing. Why would
This is
you
what
want
you
to?
do in your real life. Why would you want to do it in your game life?
Exactly. He's like, it just feels like home. I'm like, oh, what? But it's crazy to see what can really drive us and inspire us and how everybody's tastes are a little bit different.
Oh yeah, because I was talking to my husband the other day, and I'm like, the very worst thing that someone could do, they're going to torture me, like the thing that like beat me, do whatever, call me names. But if you lock me in like a small room with nothing else and just leave me in there for a week or two, oh, I'd go nuts.
Now, is that because you're afraid of your thoughts?
Oh no, I just get bored.
Okay, I can understand that. That's actually probably one of the craziest things is why solitary confinement should be illegal.
Oh
I
yeah,
don't I don't know if you've ever seen the study on that, but there's
I've seen a few different studies on it because like you can really drive someone crazy because you start talking to yourself.
well, the problem is you don't know how the passage of time is different. When you don't have any lights or anything to show daylight or night or any types of environmental kind of response, you start to kind of wonder, like, if I've been in here for months, if I've been in here for years, and it's only been like 10 minutes.
Mhm. And even if it is like a week and you're judging it because like I'm getting food at this time, XYZ, I'm getting yard time at this time, you're not having any like meaningful social interactions.
Well, there's a popular the one evidence for that being that it should be illegal is the fact that there was a kid who was like 26 years old. He was in there from when he was 24. He was only in there for 2 years, but
That's
they
insane. The whole time was in confinement, solitary
well,
confinement?
no, he was just in prison,
Oh,
and
okay.
they threw him in solitary confinement for I think it was like it was a 2 month period. So that whole time in there, he'd be out for like a week, 2 month period in there. He came home. And his family said he wouldn't talk to anybody. He would just go up in his room and lock himself in there and try to put himself into solitary confinement. Threw the TV out the window, put his mattress on the floor, did all these types of things. And he ended up committing suicide because he could not function anymore. He couldn't do it. His brain was so damaged from that type of stress and strain of being alone in solitary confinement that he just could not rationalize talking to people or being around others anymore.
Well, it's like if you look into things being like I saw a study where they had like a completely soundproof room and you're like, "Oh yeah, like a sound studio." No, completely soundproof. So soundproof that you could hear your own heartbeat. And it's like people couldn't stay in there for more than 30 minutes because they would go insane.
That's why those chambers, those auditory shit, what's it called? There's one of those chambers they throw you in with like a little bit of water where you're just floating and
Yeah.
like a float tank kind of. And
Hydraulic chamber? Nope, that's wrong.
no, it's
I know what you're talking about though.
they got like float tanks and they throw you in this thing and literally you're just stuck in there and you're like it's complete deafness and you're like if you plugged your ears you could still hear stuff, but this is like there's nothing and you're sitting there like I can hear things I didn't even know that were around me. Like you start perceiving stuff differently, your whole perception on everything gets changed, and that's crazy to think that's just a skill inside of our brain.
That's supposed to be really good if you have like a overactive nervous system because it's supposed to reset it because you're always reacting to all these outside stimuli, the lights being on, maybe a light flickers a little bit, cars rushing by, all this different noise. So you're always here and then you're here and then you're here and you're moving around. So if you go to this tank and there's none of that stimuli, it kind of resets your nervous system where you aren't like overwhelmed anymore.
It's crazy because like my grandma went to Hawaii and she didn't need her inhaler, but when she comes here she needs her inhaler. It's because there's a different population. It's cleaner air. like all these environmental factors. If you go to New York City, people that wear headphones is because not even playing music. They're just trying to soften the noise that's going into their head. Noise pollution. It's
Mhm.
crazy to think that there's all these things around us that we're not even really realizing are really affecting our everyday lives.
Well, there's parks that are called dark parks because the light pollution makes it so you can't see the sky anymore. So there's certain like national parks in America that you can go to and you can research this yourself. You can look it up online where they are so that you can actually look up and see the stars because they
Yeah.
don't have any like artificial lighting.
When I was 4 years old, 5 years old, and I would go outside, I could look up and see stars. I look up now, I see nothing. I see satellites and stuff. I'm like, where did it go? Did someone just turn them off? It's like, no, because we can't see it anymore.
Yeah, because light pollution, it's made us a lot safer, having street lamps, having people with like porch lights on, that's a lot safer. But you're missing out on so much because of that technology.
There's only so much of the world's natural beauty left, and it seems like we take a little piece of it every day.
Yeah, we're giving it up because we're like, well, we need more money, we need more oil, we need more gas. Do we need that stuff or do we need to have some sort of connection to nature? My personal beliefs is that human beings need that connection with nature because all this artificial stuff is too much. It's too much stimulus. Being able to go walking in the woods is something I think fundamentally people need.
We need to start an environmentalist cult.
Oh yeah, there's a bunch. So many.
It's because it's the best way to be environmentally friendly is by getting you to join a cult.
Being fanatical about it, yeah.
$25 in the mail, and you get your own certificate, you get your own membership license, and you're in a cult. I love it.
Well, my mom did a thing where she sent $50 to someone and they like sent her a tree. They sent her like like an actual tree in a pot
Through the mail?
through the mail. They mailed her a tree. It was
Uh,
5 feet tall. It was huge.
How many postage stamps did that take?
I think it was like in a box. Like they did it like in a
So that
it
mean
fits, it ships kind of thing.
if you donate money to a kid in Africa, do they ship you an African child? This is a bunch of questions now.
Hmm.
I got too many. My brain's already going off. I'm like, wait a minute. This would change the whole donation to kids. If I could donate money and get a small African child, I would donate so much money.
Well, see, to be fair, that's kind of a human rights violation. And you know what's also really funny? A lot of people like, oh, they look at Africa and they're like, oh, those poor impoverished children are living an impoverished life. They don't have shoes. Tom's shoes ruins economies because there's someone in that village, in that community that makes shoes. And if they're giving shoes out for free, what is that guy supposed to do with his job now?
Same thing in ancient history when they had a blacksmith and the blacksmith died. If he didn't have a son that took up his position, he didn't have a fucking blacksmith.
Mm-hmm.
Can you believe that?
Yeah. So it's good as long as Tom Shoes is giving out shoes. Well, not good for that guy and not good for the economy, but it's
Oh,
still,
people don't understand the comfortability we have now.
yeah. Well, and people don't like understand that, like, yes, you may love having your TV and your satellite, but there are cultures and places that are completely happy not having those things.
Well, it's poisoned us, but also solved the issue.
Yeah. Well, people think that, your way of life is the best way of life. You think, well, having a car is amazing. How do you live without a car? That's human rights violation to make people walk places. No, people want to live in those places. They want to live. They're happy with their lives. They don't need the newest Nikes to feel fulfilled. They're happy.
They were never influenced with it, so they don't need it.
Yeah. So it makes you really think about like the things that you in your head are like, I need this to survive. I need my phone. I need my wallet. I need my credit cards. I need technology. I need the internet. I need to be able to have my Netflix.
What
Without all that, what would you have?
what do we believe in so true that we actually really don't need? There's so many stuff
Yeah.
out there. Well, hey, Jamie, it's been awesome to having you on the podcast. We've been talking for almost 2 hours, so
Oh no.
it's good. I like it. I love these types of conversations, but it was an amazing time having you on. And I really want to give you here a minute at the end to kind of promote your content.
Okay. Well, there's not really much that I'm sure my sister didn't cover. We're just two sisters. We're twin sisters. I love talking to her. She loves talking to me. And if you boil it down, we're just having a conversation about things that we care about. I love researching cults and she loves researching crimes, and telling each other about it is like my favorite part of the week. So if you guys are interested in cults or crime or just hearing me talk about stuff that doesn't really matter, go ahead and listen to our podcast. Maybe you'll like it. It's called Some Crime Podcast.
Check it out, and I'll make sure I put all the links in the description so people can follow it.
Sounds good.
Well, thanks so much for being on this episode of Out of the Blank, and stay tuned for our next episode.